Hey there and welcome over here. It is Sunday and that calls for a new week of meals, a new what's for dinner. I hope you guys all enjoy this one and get plenty of meal inspiration. This past week, actually, my mom came into town for a few days and it just made me so happy. So I was cooking for her for a few days. The reason she actually came into town is because my younger sister moved into her dorm and college. So she's actually in college now, which is just so crazy because I just feel like it was just yesterday when I was babysitting her when she was a little bit younger. But I hope you guys all enjoy this what's for dinner, and if you are new here, I'd love to have you over at my channel, so go ahead and subscribe down below the video. But let's get on to this week of meals. To get this week kicked off, we just made some spaghetti with some meat sauce. So to begin, I'm just browning up some ground beef in my pan. This is just about a pound of some lean ground beef, and next I'm just going to be dicing up one onion. Now that my ground beef is completely cooked and I drained out all of the grease, I'm just going to begin to season this up. So I'm not going to list the seasonings to you. I'm just going to put them down below in my description box if you want to know the exact seasonings and measurements. I did happen to follow a recipe for this marinara sauce, and in my opinion, I thought this amount of seasonings was just a little bit too much. So in my description box, I will put, the measurements of what I think this recipe should have to make it 100% perfect. But anyways, I just added everything together and then I just stirred this all together and I let that onion get translucent. Now I'm going to be adding in my chicken broth along with my tomato sauce. This is just 2 cans of tomato sauce, and then I'm going to be adding in my tomato paste. And of course, I forgot to add in my garlic along with the ground beef and the onions a little bit earlier in this recipe, so I just had to add it in at this point. I always seem to forget to add in my garlic for some reason. I think it always just kind of gets lost on my countertop. But anyways, it still turned out perfect. I just let this simmer on my stove for about 30 to 35 minutes. I'm just using this pound of some thin spaghetti, but you could use a pound of any type of pasta you like. Here is my spaghetti. I thought this one came out really good, but I did tweak this recipe a little bit. So if you want this, I do have the proper measurements down below, like I said previously, in my description box. Now we're just going to be making some super simple crunch wraps. This recipe couldn't get any easier, but it really is a yummy one. So I just have a pound of some ground beef right here, and I just browned it up and I drained out all of the grease. And now I'm just adding in a little under a tablespoon of some of that taco seasoning mix. Add more or less taco seasoning, just depending on your family's preference. I just mixed this all together and set it aside. And then here is the beans I'm using. I'm just using these fat-free beans. It's just my favorite. And then I add a little bit of sour cream just for some extra creaminess. Now for the fun part, which is assembling this. So I have my tortilla right here. You really do want to use a burrito style tortilla for this recipe, but my store was all out of burrito style tortillas, so I just used the normal size tortilla. I just put some of our ground beef down and then some of our refried beans on top, and now I'm just putting part of a crispy taco shell on that. You could also just use a tostada, and then I'm adding sour cream, iceberg lettuce, cherry tomatoes, and then some cheese. And then I cut up a part of another tortilla and placed it on top just like that. And then I put all of the edges in there and then made it into kind of like a crunch wrap shape. And then onto my frying pan, I just put some oil on it and then crisped up each side. And now here it is, all crispy and delicious. We just had some guacamole, lime, and some salsa on the side. This one is really, really good. It's so simple to make, and you know, it's just a family favorite every single time. Even Brinley got in on some of the yumminess, and she enjoyed it herself. Now we're going to be making tilapia with a creamy lemon sauce. Here in my saucepan, I just have about a half a tablespoon of butter and some olive oil, and I'm just placing my 2 tilapia fillets in there. I did salt and pepper these on each side, and I'm just going to cook these 2 up until they're completely cooked. Now that our tilapia is cooked, I'm just going to remove it from the pan and put it on a separate plate. And now we're going to begin to work on our creamy lemon sauce. Into that same saucepan, we're going to begin working on our creamy lemon sauce. So I added a tablespoon of butter. I waited till that got melted, and then I added in our 3 cloves of garlic that was minced, and I just whisked this together until that garlic got fragrant. Now I'm adding in my half a cup of chicken broth, and I'm just going to whisk this together for a bit, and I'm going to let it reduce down by a third. I'm adding in my 1/4 cup of whole milk. I'm just adding it in slowly. You could also just use some heavy whipping cream if you have that, but I just didn't have any of that on hand. Now I'm going to be squeezing in my 1 whole lemon. I just think this makes this recipe so delicious, but if you're not a big lemon fan, you could just use a half of a lemon. To combine everything, I just whisked this together. I noticed that I wanted it a little bit thicker, so I just added in a cornstarch slurry. You really don't have to add in a cornstarch slurry if you don't want it thicker, but we just wanted it thicker. All a cornstarch slurry is about 1 tablespoon of cornstarch mixed with 1 tablespoon of water. Once that got a little bit thicker, I just added our tilapia back in just so it got warmed through and got some of the sauce in it. Here is the finished product. I just served it with some seasoned instant rice and some vegetables, which were just some broccoli and peas. This turned out so delicious. I just drizzled some of the sauce on top of the tilapia. This was honestly probably my favorite tilapia I have had in my entire life, and that says something. For this dinner, I was really feeling like something super easy, so I just made some creamy green chili enchiladas. So to begin, you're going to need about 2 to 2.5 cups of shredded chicken. Boil up your chicken and shred it however you choose to do so. I just like to do it in my Instant Pot. And to that chicken, I'm adding in about 3 tablespoons of cream cheese, 2 tablespoons of sour cream, and for the seasonings, I'm adding a sprinkle of some chili powder, garlic powder, and some cumin. Use however much your family likes. You know, some families like more, some families like less. And I just mix this all together so you got everything melted down. This step is totally optional, but I'm just adding in 4 ounces of some diced green chilies, and then I'm just going to mix this all together once again. Here I have my 8x8 baking dish and my can of some green chili enchilada sauce. I just poured about half a cup of that green chili enchilada sauce on my pan, and now I'm adding in my tortillas. Of course, you don't have to do it like this, but I'm just doing it layered just because it is quite a bit easier, but you could just put some of the mixture in each of the corn tortillas and roll it like traditional enchiladas, but this is a great time saver. I just added that mixture in there, and then I put another layer of corn tortillas on, and then I put another half a cup to a cup of enchilada sauce on top, and then topped it with some sharp cheddar cheese and placed it into the oven. I placed it on 375 for about 20 to 35 minutes, just until that cheese got melty and everything was bubbly. Here is my dish. This turned out really delicious. It was really flavorful, and I can't believe how simple this is to make. It's a great meal if you are rushed for time and need a quick dinner. For this dinner, we're making some chicken zucchini pasta skillet. To get us started off, I'm just chopping up 1 onion into smaller pieces, along with 2 zucchinis and some cherry tomatoes. It's just about a cup of cherry tomatoes. I actually ended up chopping up another zucchini later on. You only see 1 here, but it was actually 2 that I used in this recipe. Now we're going to begin to chop up our chicken sausage. This is just the chicken sausage I got from Costco, and it's just about 12 ounces. I'm just dicing it up just like this. To my Dutch oven, I have a tablespoon of some olive oil in there, and I just added in our onion along with our sausage. You do want your oil to be hot at this point. Mine was not quite hot enough yet, but once it was cooked through, I just added some salt to taste along with some garlic. I just squeezed it in there. It was about 4 garlic cloves. You could also add in some crushed red pepper at this point if you please to do so. Now we're adding in our 4 cups of chicken broth, and I'm just scraping all of the bits off of the bottom of the pan right here. The bits on the bottom of the pan actually add a lot of flavor, so you want to make sure you do that. I'm just doing it with a wooden spoon. You just want to bring it up to a boil. Then you're going to be adding in your pasta noodles. I just used about 8 ounces of spiral pasta noodles. Personally, it took me about 15 minutes to cook my pasta noodles completely through. 5 of those minutes I did have my Dutch oven covered with the lid. Now that my noodles are cooked through, I added in our 2 chopped up zucchinis, and I left the lid on this once again for 5 more minutes until those zucchinis were a little bit soft. And now I'm adding in our cherry tomatoes along with my 4 fresh basil leaves that I chopped up in my half of a lemon that I'm just squeezing in, or you could add in about a tablespoon of some lemon juice, and then you're going to be adding in about 4 tablespoons of some Parmesan cheese, and you're just going to stir this all together. You just want it warmed through at this point. Here is this dish. It was so yummy, and it was perfect for summer, and it just tasted so healthy and fresh. I really did love this recipe, and I feel like you would also love it. You might remember, but about a month ago on my channel, I made this Buster Bar ice cream cake dessert. Well, I'm gonna make it again, but I'm gonna do it a little bit differently this time. I am halving this recipe, but to my pot right here, I'm adding in 3/4 cup of some semi-sweet chocolate chips, along with 6 ounces of evaporated milk, and then 1/4 cup of some melted butter. Next, you're adding in 1 cup of powdered sugar, and then you're just going to whisk this up on medium heat until the chocolate chips start to melt, and you're just going to let it sit there for about 5 minutes, stirring it very often, and then you're going to take it off the heat and let it completely cool for about 15 minutes. While that's cooling, we're going to begin to work on our Oreo cookie crust for this recipe. So I'm using about 1.5 sleeves of these Oreos. This is just a 14.5 ounce package of Oreos, and then you're going to break them up. You really want them finely chopped, and I'm just doing this with my meat mallet. To my 8x8 baking dish, I'm just adding in our crumbled up Oreo cookies along with 1/4 cup of melted butter, and you're just going to mix this all together until it forms into a crust, and then you're just going to pat it down. If you don't like Oreo cookies, you could definitely just use some graham crackers instead. I stuck this in my freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes just so that crust got nice and set up. Now I'm going to begin assembling this. So this is the main difference that I'm doing this time compared to last time making this recipe. So onto our Oreo crust, I'm just sprinkling some of these peanuts. It's a little under 1/4 cup, I'd say. And now I'm just adding about half of our chocolatey fudgy sauce that is completely cooled on there, and I'm just going to spread it out. And then on top of that, I'm just going to be squeezing a little bit of this hard shell magic shell on top. Of course, that step is optional, but I just thought it gave it some great flavor. I have this quart size Breyers ice cream right here. You could use any type of ice cream you prefer. I just used half of that quart of ice cream, and I'm just going to spread it out as even as possible on here. I did let this sit out for a while. You do want your ice cream kind of melty, or else it just, you know, won't layer on very easily. Now I'm just sprinkling another 1/4 cup of peanuts on top, and then I'm just going to be adding some more magic shell, hard shell, and then I'm adding in the remainder of our chocolatey fudge on top, and then I just sprinkled some more peanuts on top just to make it look a little bit nicer. Then I stuck this back into my freezer for about 4 to 5 hours just to set up. And here it is, all set up out of the freezer. This turns out so yummy every time I make it. It is a family favorite for sure. I actually made it for my mom because it was her birthday this past week, and I was just so happy she was in town visiting me, and she's just so sweet. But anyways, she also loved this ice cream cake. And that is a wrap of this week's What's for Dinner. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I have a really fun video coming out Wednesday, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. But I will see you guys there. Bye for now.